This is a definitive review and comparison by an audio engineer of the new Sony WH-1000XM6 wireless Bluetooth headphones with the prior generation Sony WH-1000XM5. This review and comparison between the Sony WH-1000XM6 and the WH-1000XM5 will contain objective sound samples of music, microphones, ANC, transparency modes, gaming latency tests, and more. Chapters are enabled in this video. Since this is an immersive review, wear earbuds in both of your ears or a pair of headphones. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Brandon, and I've been a professional audio engineer for over 15 years, especially in the live concert and production field. By the end of this video, you can determine whether or not the Sony WH-1000XM6 is a right fit for you and whether or not you should buy it or upgrade from the XM5. If that's you, you'll find affiliate links to purchase in the description. It helps support the channel. Let's jump into the immersive experience with the first song sample. You'll see the headphones you're listening to and the tests by looking at the label on the screen and the artists and song names I licensed from MusicBed at the bottom. This song is from my personal friend Hannah Parrott. It is mainly string-based, so it'll give you a good sense of the mid-range, warmth, and how each headphone handles the high end of the bow rubbing up against the strings. One of the things that you first notice about the Sony WH-1000XM6 is the return of the foldable ear cup design, which I know many Sony fans will be thrilled to see. This makes it much easier to pack up independently or in the new smaller case with a magnetic latch. I freaking love magnets. Also, for those who have concerns about the durability of the latch and connection point on the XM6, you'll see that there's now a metal connection ring here that I'm certain Sony added to help reinforce it and prevent any of those issues that prior models, including the XM5, have had. The Sony WH-1000XM6 has several other changes, like a thicker headband for added comfort and an asymmetrical design, which makes it really easy to tell which side is the right side and which one is the left by feel alone. Because of these changes, the XM6 is far more comfortable than the XM5. It also has a stronger clamp force, so if you thought the XM5 was too easy to slip off your head, well, this should help. And on both the XM6 and XM5, I can wear glasses without interfering with the sound or ANC performance, but your mileage may vary. The XM6 ear depth is about 7/8 of an inch, an increase from the 3/4 of an inch on the XM5. An awesome detail is that the ear cups are easily removable and replaceable on the XM6. I honestly can't tell if the XM5 can do this, but it surely does not come off easily if it does. It also has a larger, more obvious power button, 12 mics up from the 8 on the XM5, which helps with ANC, transparency, and the microphone, which we'll test later on in this video. It also allows you to listen to music while charging. For that charging, the battery life is the same between each model, with 30 hours of music playback with ANC on and 40 hours with it off. 3 minutes of charging provides 3 hours of playback and 10 minutes for 5 hours. Both still have the swipe gesture surface on the right ear cup for volume, play, pause, track changes, etc., and the ability to activate the quick attention mode when you place your palm on it to go into a temporary transparency mode easily. They also have wear detection and the option to listen to wired high-res music over the headphone cable. What's fantastic for the XM6 is that you can now listen to music over the headphone cable while it's being charged, but there's still no option to listen to music via the USB-C cable. The XM6's texture and feel is much better than on the XM5. The XM5 has a soft touch surface that feels great, but is quite prone to showing scuffs and marks on the black model. The XM6 has more of a matte texture instead and will look less worn over time. Available launch colors are black, blue, and this nice off-white color that I have here. Overall, I'm a big fan of the design. It's not too far of a departure from the XM5, but it has many refinements learned from the XM5 and hopefully alleviates any of the issues found in that design. For this next song, listen to the low end, the reverb from the vocals, and the snare, and the sharpness of the hi-hat and the stereo spread from the wah-wah sounds, and let us know in the comments what you notice. The Sony WH-1000XM6 and XM5 continue to support Android fast pair on compatible Android phones, the ability to connect to 2 devices simultaneously, speak-to-chat capabilities, which enables transparency mode briefly when you begin talking, adaptive sound control based upon scenes or situations, LDAC upscaling up to 96kHz 24-bit audio, and DSEE Extreme on Android, and AAC and SBC codecs. With the XM6, you gain Bluetooth 5.3 up from 5.2, which is on the XM5, which means that the XM6 now supports LE audio or Bluetooth Low Energy Audio and Auracast. Bluetooth 5.3 and 5.4 are rated for about 800 feet of distance. I can easily walk all around my 2-story house without losing connection until the furthest end and through all these doors and walls. And that's only a brief cutout once or twice when the Bluetooth Connect quality is set to prioritize sound quality over stable connection, which would surely alleviate this if you switched. Both models support Sony's 360 reality audio, spatial sound, and head tracking, but the XM6 now has a feature that allows you to take any content and utilize spatial audio upmix to enjoy a more cinematic immersive experience. One thing that I love to see on the XM6 is the new 10-band EQ option, which gives you more flexibility and control over the sound that you can dial in to your taste. The XM5 only had a 5-band EQ, so having twice as much is awesome. I do have my own custom EQ for the XM6 and the XM5 available for channel members, but we'll check out how it sounds later on in this video. The XM6 also has a new Find Your Equalizer feature that can help you find a tuning that matches your taste based upon their guided process. It's a little bit easier than using the EQ. I think this is fine for something quite basic, but it's pretty limited and I really couldn't quite get the sound that I wanted compared to using EQ. This next track is filled with a lot. Listen to the subfrequencies, the high end from the snare and hi-hat type sounds, and the mid-range from the synth. Now for the fun part of the review, tests. Starting with gaming latency tests. This one is relatively straightforward. You'll see how many frames pass between the time that I tap the screen and when you hear the resulting sound effect in the Call of Duty game. Let's compare them. As you can see, both maintain the same delay of 13 frames. That's a bit confusing since the XM6 supports LE audio priority, which should lower latency and benefit gaming, but ultimately I wouldn't use it either for competitive gaming, which requires a faster response time. For this track, listen to how clear the bass guitar is, as well as the electric guitar and how bright the cymbals are. Of the 12 mics on the Sony WH-1000XM6, 6 are beamforming mics to help pick up your voice for calls. This is 2 more than the XM5, so the question is, do we notice a notable difference? Let's find out with some objective tests. Again, you'll see which environment and scenario are being tested by looking at the labels on the screen. Here's what a Zoom call would sound like if you're using the Sony WH-1000XM6 for the microphone. How do you think it sounds? Here's what the Sony WH-1000XM5 sound like if we were to use them for the microphone in a Zoom call. This is what it would sound like if you were to receive an HD phone call from someone who's wearing and using the Sony WH-1000XM6 as the microphone. Here's what it would sound like if you were to receive an HD phone call from someone who's wearing and using the Sony WH-1000XM5 for the microphone. Here's what a phone call would sound like if you're wearing the Sony WH-1000XM6 in a simulated windy environment. And here's what the Sony WH-1000XM5s would sound like in a simulated windy environment if you're on a HD phone call. The microphone would sound like on the Sony WH-1000XM6 Here's more sound like What were your observations? Overall, they sounded close to each other in every scenario and situation, at least to me. Perhaps the XM6 performs slightly better in a windy environment, but there are enough variables that make it hard to find a clear winner. But let me know what you think in the comments. For this song, pay attention to the clarity of the attack on the acoustic guitar strings and how forward the mid-range is on the body of the guitar and vocals.
When the nights get cold, sometimes when I look over, I see you by a fire with your hands out in the open, and I wonder if you're singing an autumn song, or if I'm singing all alone. I must be singing on my own.
With the Sony WH-1000 XM6, Sony says it's the best noise-canceling headphone ever, not just from Sony, but the whole industry, according to tests at least. They say this results from the new processor, the 4 extra mics, and the new adaptive noise-canceling optimizer over the auto optimizer on the XM5. This adaptive noise-canceling optimizer supposedly performs even better across the whole frequency range of what we can hear, but especially in the mid-range where a lot of the body of sounds resides. But it's one thing to hear Sony's talking points, it's another to objectively test it and hear the samples for yourself. So let's check them out. For a baseline test in terms of transparency mode, here is what the recording sounds like without any headphones on there or transparency mode. This is just what the mics sound like. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sounds like in a simulated quiet room in transparency mode. Here is what the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sound like in transparency mode in a clean, quiet room. And here's what the microphones sound like on their own. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sound like in ANC mode in a quiet room. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sound like in ANC mode in a quiet room. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sound like in transparency mode in a simulated windy environment. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sound like in transparency mode in a simulated windy environment. Here is what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sound like in ANC mode in a simulated windy environment. Here is the Sony WH-1000 XM5s in ANC mode in a simulated windy environment. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sound like in transparency mode in a simulated cafe environment. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sound like in transparency mode in a simulated cafe environment. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM6 sound like in ANC mode in a simulated cafe environment. Here's what the Sony WH-1000 XM5 sounds like in a simulated cafe environment in ANC mode. What did you notice? What stood out to me is how naturally sounding the transparency mode is on the XM6. It has more high-end and body to the sound compared to the XM5, which sounds a bit dull and thin. ANC is certainly improved on the XM6 and lowers the overall sound across your hearing range, but a bit more on the body or mid-range of the sound is cut out, leaving mostly higher frequencies still lingering. This is in comparison to the XM5, which leaks just enough audio to sound fuller and more distracting compared to the XM6. So funny thing, on the first day of testing out the XM6, I made a meal while wearing them and then had my meal, only to realize once I took them off that I had left the exhaust fan above my Sone on the whole time. That certainly made me go, whoa, these things are pretty good. This track is a very mid-range, warm, and soulful track. Listen to her vocals, the electric guitar lines, and the keyboard. Now, my favorite part of an audio review is the sound quality. First, some context. During my briefing with Sony, they said that the Sony WH-1000XM6 was tuned by Sony engineers and mastering engineers for various musical artists. It's hard to figure out how seriously to take this and how much they are involved in the tuning of the XM6. You know, is it just marketing or is it real? Still, it indicates that Sony's not leaning hard towards following objective frequency graphs or measurements to hit a specific target like a Harman curve. Instead, it's being tuned from the ear alone. The new drivers in the XM6 have a more rigid dome that Sony says results in richer details, clearer vocals, improved balance, and smoother and extended high-frequency reproduction. As you've listened to the song samples throughout this video, have you heard anything that seems to align with these claims? Initially, when I first listened to the Sony WH-1000XM6, I thought it was more of the same Sony sound with a darker, warmer sound with more muted high end. I described this as kind of being under the blanket. In many ways, this first impression still rings true, but it's more nuanced than that. Over the past few generations, Sony has been progressively moving more and more towards a more balanced sound with a clearer and more elevated high end and less of that tubby bloated low end. The sound is becoming more mature sounding on the flagship WH-1000 lineup, with the new alt line fulfilling the desires of those who want that bonkers low end at the expense of clear high end and balance. The more mature sound continues with the XM6. These subtle differences are more obvious when you listen to the XM6 and the XM5 back to back. The XM6 has more high end detail and clarity than the XM5, a wider soundstage, and a sound that feels less constrained. I kind of describe the XM5 is like you're speaking into a cup a little bit. Listening to vocals on the XM5 feels like they're right in my face or in my nose. While the XM6, it sounds a bit more balanced, smooth, and clean to me. It's still very much a Sony sound, but better, yet not quite the sound I prefer. I have a fix for that, but first, let's listen to another song. Pay attention to the cymbals, high end, the kick drums attack, and the bass guitar's warmth.
We're just hanging around with nothing to do. Summer, loving, give me something. I'm about to lose my mind. 'Cause when I see you, I really think I need you. Every single summertime. All the seasons in between. They can try and mess with me, but I can tell you when the feeling's right, 'cause it feels just like
With my experience as an audio engineer, specifically mixing live bands, I love EQing things and making them sound better and more aligned with my preferences. So I created a custom EQ for the Sony WH-1000XM6 that makes it way better with a more precise and detailed high end and a punchier and cleaner low end. The XM6 handles EQ very well. Let's listen to a song sample to hear what it sounds like, but this EQ is available for channel members who can become one by tapping the join button next to the subscribe button. Becoming a member gives you access to my custom EQs for the Sony WH-1000XM6, the XM5, and many other headphones and earbuds, along with wallpapers created from camera tests, from various smartphone reviews, and other exclusive content. This does help support this channel, cover some of the costs of the editors I work with, and covers the purchase of products to review. So your support is always appreciated. Let's listen to that song sample and see how the custom EQ cleans things up and makes it more punchy in the kick drum and bass guitar. This song has a lot of great reverb. Listen to how forward the vocals sound and whether you can hear much of the percussive instruments in the background or if they sound buried. The mid-range can bring out some of the instruments. The bass guitar is also a significant part of the song. So should you get the XM6 or upgrade? It's $450 USD or $600 Canadian. Before you spend that much money, you want to ensure it's the right fit for you. Here are some questions to help you determine if it's worth upgrading to or getting the Sony WH-1000XM6. If you want a foldable hinge design, the XM6 is worth considering. If you found the XM5 to be uncomfortable around the headband or that it easily fell off, the XM6 would be a nice upgrade for you. If you are hoping for a dramatic difference in microphone quality, well, the XM6 is not going to give you that huge leap. If you want to listen to music using using the headphone cable while the device is charging, the XM6 is perfect for you. If you want LE audio and Auracast support, the XM6 is an excellent reason to consider upgrading. If you want the best ANC, definitely get the XM6. If you've been satisfied with the XM5's ANC and transparency mode, it may be worth considering holding onto them longer and saving some money. The XM6 would be a good choice if you want a more natural sounding transparency mode. If you mostly like the Sony sound but wish it were a touch clearer than the XM5 or prior models, the XM6 might give you some slight refinement. However, if you're more hands-on and like to tinker with EQs, the XM6's 10-band EQ would make that easier. So, do you think the Sony WH-1000 XM6 is for you? Let me know what you think in the comments, and remember the affiliate link in the description. This song has a killer bass line, pay attention to that, the synth, and the vocal reverb. So which one is for me? While there are not many dramatic differences in quality between the XM5 and XM6, the sum of all the improvements truly make the XM6 a compelling option to get or upgrade to. It's a great set of refinements, with the standout being how much better the ANC and transparency modes are. Plus, the move towards a more mature sound and the ease of EQ in getting the sound that I want make the Sony WH-1000 XM6 even more compelling to me. The hardware, refinements, sound, additional software capabilities like Auracast make this even easier, so I would easily pick the Sony WH-1000 XM6. Here's another excellent song that covers a ton of the frequency range. Listen to how the high-end and mid-range change between headphones. Although the $50 price increase for the Sony WH-1000 XM6 compared to the launch price of the XM5 is unfortunate, I can confidently say that this is a great upgrade and worth considering. Because of some of its parts and refinement, the XM6 seems like the most mature release from Sony in their entire history of their WH-1000 line. But I'd love to know if you think the same thing. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. This song is an arena stomper that throws a wide spectrum of frequencies at you. Pay attention to how the high-end and mid-range change between headsets. On some headphones, the high-end can sound a bit shrill for the hi-hat. This review was made possible by Sony, which sent me a pair of the Sony WH-1000 XM6 for a review. I was not obligated to make a video on the Sony WH-1000 XM6. Sony has no editorial input or control over this video and are seeing it at the same time as you. This video is supported by viewers like you. Thanks for watching This Is Tech Today. Until next time.